Hello, this is Dr. Dave Mastak talking to you about reciprocity.com. The E is written with a 3. And in this particular video, what I'm going to do is talk to you about levels of abstraction in research. This is part of my Nerd Out Wednesday series, where I just talk about things that I find interesting in science. So I'm actually a professor of innovation strategy and entrepreneurship, and this is something that we don't necessarily talk about, but it's something that we do a lot within the scientific field. We don't talk about this so much because it is just kind of ingrained in what we do. So what I'm going to do is go into talking about what do I mean by levels of abstraction, and then sort of give you kind of a armchair theorizing definition of it, and then get into, why it's an important tool, and maybe sort of thinking about it, and or giving you some tips and what you can think about going forward with levels of abstraction. Because I know that there's more than just me that are struggling with this within the scientific field. So what is level of abstraction? So that is the degree to which you remove the specific relationship that you have from the particular phenomenon, and you allow the particular relationships that you have to be able to generalize across more particular phenomenon. So what you're trying to do, if you're looking at a very specific minutiae thing, what you're trying to do is look to see what is really of essence there, and then try to abstract and come up with, basically it's another word, abstraction would be another word for coming up with the essence, right? So thinking about what is the key things that you're looking at and how can that actually be applied to many different areas, right? So you don't want to, so a scientist or a social scientist doesn't want to be so specific with the thing that they're looking at that it doesn't apply anywhere, right? So that's going to be really applied at that case, right? That is very, very specific, and you're just kind of executing on the particular thing that you're doing. Now, that's not the job of what we do in science. And when you get if you get a PhD or something like that, what you're trying to do is abstract as much as you possibly can so it can be applied to as many things as you possibly can apply it to. But there's something that you should be thinking about going forward. It is important to get the appropriate level of abstraction. I'm going to explain why. So you can think of abstraction as, and when you come up with abstraction, you can think of it as kind of looking through a microscope, right? So you're looking at this really minute detail. You have a petri dish in front of you, right? That little thing that's that wide. And you're looking at the bacteria that's there. If you zoom in too much, everything kind of gets blurry, or you just kind of see little kind of squiggly lines, and nothing really necessarily makes all that much sense. If you abstract too far, if you kind of zoom out too far, and you look at, if you zoom out as far as you possibly can, you're not really going to see any particular details. It's going to look like it is just a bunch of mess, right? You're just going to see this petri dish, and there's nothing going on within that petri dish. You have to find the right sort of focal point such that you can see all of the little details that's going on within that petri dish, but also allow that to be able to generalize across other particular phenomenon so you can explain many different things, right? So it can't be, so here's what ends up happening, right? If you are abstracting so much, what's going to happen is when you bring this to an external audience, when you bring this to your scientific reviewers, or you talk about this to other people, you're going to get either a lot of detesters. People are not going to really believe what you're saying because it's not believable, because it's too abstract, or people are just not going to understand what you're talking about because it is too abstract. And really what you're trying to do in that particular case, when you abstract so much, you're making up your own language, right? At that moment, you have to essentially make up your own language. One of them can be, for example, the abstraction can be completely in mathematical form. You can do mathematical formulas, and that would be an appropriate level of abstraction for some people in some fields. The problem is when it gets really, really abstract. And in our field, we have to kind of worry about this just a little bit. particularly when we talk about how people behave in organizations. And we often have to think about it, how it's relevant to managers and how they're going to make sense of what we're doing. So if we abstract so much that it becomes just a series of mathematical formulas, it's not going to be nearly as applicable to managers in their day-to-day life, because they essentially just are not going to get it. It's going to make a lot of sense, and there's going to be a really nice language of holding this all together. You're going to have a really nice logic of holding that all together because you have this sort of mathematical formula. But when you go and teach people about what you're trying to do, it's going to be too abstract for them to sort of absorb what they're going to do. And it's a problem that we often have. And this is why we have these sort of moments of translation. So for example, I'm trained as a chemical engineer. And then when you actually try to apply some of the stuff in the real world, it doesn't necessarily sink in as much. There's only a few things that really stick with me and that have stuck with me years out from that moment when I learned all those formulas, mathematical formulas within chemical engineering. The same thing with really abstract forms in economics as well. There's some wonderful research that goes on in there. If you've ever looked at the Journal of Economic Theory, really abstract stuff, or econometrica can be very abstract stuff, but and it's very applicable. It's really rich, really interesting stuff, but at the same time, it's hard to generalize. It's hard to sort of bring this out to other people. And so we have to we have to think about, how does this necessarily apply sort of at the, the abstract level, but then also think about it, how it can be abstracted, or that it can actually be generalized, that other people can understand the language that you're actually saying. So a lot of it has to do, when you do this abstracting, you're also thinking about, so you're at the minutia, right? So the minutia sort of level it's not going to have a very large audience. And what you're trying to do is bring it out so that you get a larger and larger audience, and abstract more that it sort of represents many different other phenomenon. Generally, the theories that have a very large impact is that they're really doing a very good job of explaining that particular phenomenon that you're looking at, but then as well kind of makes sense in other areas, right? That it can be like, oh yeah, I never thought about that. It's, oh yeah, that little idea there actually applies in different locations. So you're looking at these levels of abstraction, and you're trying to think about it, how you can actually frame it such that those people, those other audiences might not necessarily doubt what you're looking at, right? So you're looking at those detesters, and you're trying to frame it in such a way so that other people are like, okay, I get it. That makes a lot of sense. And that's what you're trying to do, is you're thinking about it in terms of a puzzle, right? When you're doing this level of abstraction kind of stuff, because that's what you do when you write a paper, is you kind of start out really narrow, and then you go back, and then you go back in again, and you're really trying to find the right focal lens such that it makes a lot of sense. And you're thinking about it in terms of a puzzle piece, in terms of crafting the particular paper or the theory or whatever you're doing, such that many people can see it, and they see the different edges of the puzzle, and it all fits together, and it kind of explains more of a particular phenomenon. And that's really nice theorizing. That's really nice abstraction, if you can get to that moment where you can do that. So that's a key thing to think about with levels of abstraction with research, is thinking about the particular, that it also explains the sort of minutia, what's going on, but as well can be generalized, but then as well sort of fit in a way that people can pick it up and make sense of it from different areas, such as going to reduce the number of detractors with your particular phenomenon. Now, that's really hard to do, and it often takes an art, and often it is, there's a lot of luck involved as well, because you don't know what people are going to pick up a lot of times, but you have to consciously think about the level of abstraction that you're going to take. If it's going to be really abstract with a bunch of mathematical formulas, just know that the audience is probably going to be smaller, but as well, it's probably going to be a lot more robust, and there's going to be a lot more sort of logic behind the scenes than if you are doing much more less abstract work. But then there's this fine line of getting the right audience with this abstraction that you have, and you have to think about that as much as you possibly can. So you want to zoom in and zoom out at the same time, and kind of get the right level, such that it makes sense to a lot of people. So that's all I wanted to talk about, because I think it's really nerdy, but really interesting. So if you like this video, make sure you give me a thumbs up, and I do appreciate it. Do subscribe to the YouTube channel. It's amazing that you are doing this at this moment. I do appreciate it. And hopefully it's going to help out with this whole reciprocity project, right? So check that out. Take care and have a wonderful day.